The rain fell in thick sheets over the city, turning the streets into a slick, shining maze of metal and puddles. Neon lights flickered through the storm, painting the walls with splashes of red, blue, and green. Elias walked quickly, his coat pulled tight against the cold. The wind bit at his face and the wet clung to him, but he didn't slow down. He had errands to finish, supplies to bring back to his small shelter at the edge of the city. In a place like this, survival meant moving fast, thinking faster, and never hesitating. A faint sound made him pause. It was quiet, barely more than a whisper, but it carried through the storm. He stopped, listening. There it was again, a soft, trembling cry. His hand instinctively went to the strap of his pack where his few trusted tools were kept. He turned slowly, scanning the flooded alleyways. "Hello," he called, his voice low but steady. "Is someone there?" In this city, cries like that usually meant trouble, but he had never been the type to turn away. He followed the sound, carefully stepping over puddles and twisted metal. Around a corner, he found her. She was small, barely the height of a child of 7 or 8, huddled in a doorway. Her skin shimmered faintly in the neon glow, a pale silver blue, unlike anything Elias had seen before. Her eyes, wide and trembling, glowed faintly with an almost ethereal light. She was soaked to the bone, and she shivered uncontrollably. Her hands clutched a small piece of cloth around her shoulders, but it did little to keep her warm. "Hey," Elias said gently, crouching down to her level. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." She shook her head, her silvery hair plastered to her face with rain. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Only a small, trembling whimper escaped. Elias looked around. The streets were empty, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. He needed to get her out of the rain before anyone, or anything, found her. Slowly, he reached into his coat and pulled out his large, thick jacket. He stepped closer, making sure to keep his movements calm and deliberate. "Here," he said softly, extending the coat. "Take this, you'll be warmer." Elias draped the coat over her small shoulders. It was far too large, but it wrapped her tightly enough to trap some of her warmth. He could feel her trembling even through the fabric. "There," he said, his voice quiet and steady. "Better. Come on, I'll get you somewhere dry." He could feel it in the tension of her body, the way her eyes darted around, scanning for threats. Elias led her through the rain-slick streets, keeping to the shadows. He had learned long ago how to move without drawing attention, how to stay invisible in a city that thrived on chaos. Every few steps, he glanced down at her. She was silent now, gripping his hand tightly, her glowing eyes wide and alert. "You're safe," he said quietly, more to reassure himself than her. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." Elias couldn't help but wonder where she had come from, why she was out here alone in the storm. Her glowing eyes and shimmering skin were like nothing he had ever encountered. She was alien, yes, but there was something more, something important about her. As they approached the edge of the city, Elias spotted the faint outline of his shelter. It was small and unremarkable, a collection of metal panels and scavenged materials, but it was warm and safe. He quickened his pace, guiding her toward it. She followed without hesitation, trusting him, and that trust made his chest tighten with a strange mixture of responsibility and concern. Inside, he closed the door and pulled the girl away from the wet entrance. The shelter was dimly lit but warmer than the storm outside. Elias set his pack down and went to the small heater in the corner, turning it on. A faint hum filled the room and the air began to take on a comforting warmth. The girl hugged herself, shivering less now but still clearly frightened. Elias knelt down again, looking her in the glowing eyes. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "Lyra." He pulled a clean blanket from his pack and wrapped it around her, letting her sit on the small cot in the corner. She curled up under it, her eyes fixed on him as if trying to understand who he was and whether he could be trusted. "Do you have anyone with you?" he asked gently. "Family." Her glowing eyes dropped to the floor and Elias noticed a small necklace around her neck. It was delicate, with a strange symbol etched into a tiny metal pendant. He didn't recognize it, but something about it seemed important. "Where did you get that?" he asked, nodding toward the necklace. She didn't answer, only clutched it with her small hands. Elias decided not to push further. She clearly wasn't ready to tell her story yet, and forcing it would only make her retreat further. Instead, he moved around the shelter, checking supplies. He had some dried rations, water, and a few basic medical items. He handed her a small packet of food, and she took it hesitantly, nibbling at it as she studied him. "You don't have to eat if you don't want," he said, sitting across from her. "But you need energy to stay warm." Elias kept an eye on her, checking the locks on the door and the small windows. Every now and then he glanced at the pendant around her neck. He had a vague sense of recognition, a memory from some long-forgotten story or warning. The symbol seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her small voice trembling. They are looking for me." "I know," he said, "but you're safe here. I won't let anyone take you." He had saved many people before, faced many dangers, but this felt different. He didn't yet know who her mother was or why she was being hunted. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: as long as he was here, no harm would come to her. And for the first time in a long while, Elias felt a spark of hope in the storm. The storm outside had begun to die down by morning, leaving the city streets slick and quiet. Elias had stayed awake most of the night, keeping a careful watch over Lyra as she slept under the warm blanket. He had a feeling this child was more than she seemed. Her glowing eyes, her cautious intelligence, the way she had seemed to sense danger before he even noticed it. But for now, she was exhausted, and he allowed her the rest she needed. When the first soft rays of sunlight filtered through the tiny window, Lyra stirred. Her small hands clutched the blanket as she sat up slowly, blinking at the light. She looked around the shelter with cautious curiosity, taking in the modest space. The cot, the small heater, the shelves with supplies, all of it was alien to her, yet she seemed fascinated by it. "Good morning," Elias said, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "Did you sleep well?" "You'll heal quickly," he said, trying to reassure her. "Humans are tough, but I know you are too." The small rations he had brought were not much, but they were enough to give them both energy. He offered her a piece of dried fruit, which she accepted cautiously. She ate slowly, savoring the food as though it was a rare treasure. As they ate, Elias decided to try to learn more about her. "Lyra," he began gently, "I need to know a little about you. Why were you out there alone?" "Who is looking for you?" Whoever these people were, they were determined and dangerous. And Lyra, a small child, was the target. He clenched his fists, feeling a surge of protectiveness. "Don't worry," he said firmly. "I won't let them take you, not now, not ever." She nodded slightly, as if accepting that, for now, he was her protector. Once they had eaten, Elias began to explain their situation. He told her about the city, about how dangerous it could be, and about the few places that were safe for those who didn't belong. Lyra listened intently, her glowing eyes following every gesture he made. He could tell she was absorbing everything, trying to understand this human and this strange world she had fallen into. "You are very smart," Elias said finally. "You notice things others don't. That will help you survive." This child had already faced more danger than most adults ever would, yet she was determined to survive. He felt a deep admiration for her, but also a fierce sense of responsibility. As the day progressed, Elias decided it was time to make the shelter more secure. He moved crates to block the windows, reinforced the door, and even set small alarms, simple noise traps that would alert them if anyone approached. Lyra watched him work, her glowing eyes bright with fascination. "Why do you do this?" she asked softly. Elias paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Because it matters," he said simply. "Because people like you deserve safety. Because humans can be clever, and clever can win where strength alone cannot." By afternoon, the shelter was secure enough to face another storm if one came. Elias sat down, exhausted, while Lyra moved closer, still wrapped in the large coat he had given her. She had started to remove some of her fear, though not all. "I want to help," she said quietly. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Help?" "Hell, I try not to." Her small voice carried both fear and a hint of sadness. Elias realized then that she was hiding a part of herself, probably out of necessity. Whoever was hunting her would see that power as a threat or a tool. He resolved to protect her no matter what. The afternoon passed slowly, and Elias taught her simple survival skills: how to move quietly, how to observe without being seen, and how to trust instincts. Lyra picked up quickly, her intelligence and awareness remarkable for someone so young. She listened carefully, asked questions, and practiced quietly, always eager to learn. As evening approached, Elias decided to check the streets. He moved cautiously outside, surveying the quiet city. The storm had left puddles and debris, but no signs of immediate danger. He returned, feeling a slight relief. "See," he said, sitting down beside Lyra. "Humans can be clever. We find ways to survive even when the odds are against us." I think I understand," she said softly. Elias smiled. There was a long road ahead, but this small moment of understanding was important. They had begun to form a bond, one of trust, protection, and mutual respect. That night, as the shelter filled with the soft hum of the heater, Elias noticed something unusual. Lyra's eyes flickered with a brighter glow as she muttered something under her breath. It sounded like a word or a name, but he couldn't understand it. He made a mental note to ask her later. Whatever she was saying, it carried weight, a sense of importance that he could not ignore. He decided to let it go for now. For the first time since finding her, he allowed himself to rest a little. He watched her curl up under the blanket, her small body shivering less than the night before. He felt a deep sense of determination. Whoever was hunting her, whoever wanted her gone, would have to face him first. Sleep came slowly, but it came. And in the quiet moments between dreams, Elias thought about the strange pendant around her neck, the faint glow in her eyes, and the words she whispered. Something told him that Lyra was far more important than he had realized. She was not just a lost child in a storm. She was a key to something much larger, something that could change everything. As dawn approached, Elias woke to the faint sound of movement. Lyra was awake, sitting on the edge of the cot, her glowing eyes studying the room. She turned to him. "I think they are closer," she whispered. Elias' heart tightened. "Then we need to be ready," he said firmly. He moved to check the traps he had set, ensuring every alarm, every simple sensor was in place. Lyra watched, learning, and for the first time he noticed a flicker of determination in her expression. "You are brave," he said quietly, "and clever. Humans can help, but we also need courage. You have both." Elias realized that this child, so small and fragile, had already begun to understand the strength that came not just from power, but from courage, trust, and clever thinking. Outside, the city remained quiet, but the tension was palpable. Somewhere beyond the shelter, someone was hunting. Elias knew it was only a matter of time before they would arrive. But he also knew that he and Lyra were ready to face it together. And in that moment, he realized something that filled him with both awe and hope. Humans had a way of surviving where others would fail. They had a way of turning disadvantage into advantage, weakness into strength. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough to protect Lyra, enough to keep her alive, enough to give her a chance to grow into the power she was meant to hold. Elias looked at her glowing eyes, the flicker of curiosity, fear, and determination, and he felt a deep certainty. He would protect her no matter what. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The night came quietly at first, wrapping the city in shadows. The streets were slick with the last remnants of rain, the neon lights reflecting off puddles like fractured glass. Inside the small shelter, Elias and Lyra sat near the heater, listening to the soft hum and the occasional drip of water from the roof. For now, all was quiet. But both of them knew it was only temporary. Elias kept glancing at the small girl, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She had grown more confident since the storm, more aware of her surroundings, and yet the tension in her shoulders never fully eased. He understood that feeling all too well, the constant alertness of someone who had been hunted, who had no guarantee of safety. Suddenly, a faint sound reached them from outside, a soft scraping barely audible over the heater's hum. Elias stiffened. He motioned for Lyra to stay quiet and reached for the simple alarm he had set at the door. It was only a string with small tin cans tied to it, but it would rattle loudly if anyone moved the door. The scraping grew closer. Elias felt a tight knot form in his stomach. Whoever was out there wasn't just curious, they were hunting. He crouched near Lyra, speaking softly. "Stay calm, don't make a sound, let me handle this." The simple alarm clanged, and Elias' heart jumped. He moved swiftly to the side, keeping low. The shadow of a figure appeared outside the small window. It was tall, humanoid but not human, with sleek armor that glinted faintly in the dim neon glow. Its eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the area before moving closer. Elias realized immediately that this was no ordinary pursuer. This was a professional hunter, trained, skilled, and dangerous. He glanced at Lyra. "We need to move now." The hunter followed, but Elias had prepared for this. He led them through tight passages, over debris, and through shadows where even a trained eye would have difficulty seeing them. Lyra moved quietly beside him, her small size an advantage, her glowing eyes dimmed to avoid detection. As they ran, Elias whispered, "They are fast, but humans are clever. We can use the city to our advantage." He adjusted his path, leading them into a narrow tunnel where the hunter's vision would be blocked. They moved silently, and for a few moments it seemed they had escaped notice. But then a soft hiss echoed behind them. Elias turned slightly and saw the hunter stepping into the alley, its armor reflecting faint light. It moved with unnatural precision, scanning for any sign of life. Elias felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. One wrong move and they would be caught. He remembered a small trick he had learned long ago, distractions. Elias reached into his pack and tossed a few small, metallic objects down a side alley. They clanged against the walls and rolled into the shadows. The hunter paused, its head tilting toward the noise. Elias seized the moment, guiding Lyra further into the maze of streets. They ran until they reached a larger, abandoned building. Elias motioned for Lyra to follow him inside. The building was dark and empty, the kind of place most would avoid. Inside, Elias crouched behind a large crate, listening. Lyra sat beside him, her small body tense but calm. "They will not give up easily," Elias said quietly. "We must be smarter. It shows when I am scared or angry." Elias knew he had only a few moments to act. He whispered, "We need to move again, follow my lead." Then suddenly the hunter appeared again, blocking their path. Elias froze, assessing the situation. The hunter raised a weapon, sleek alien technology that glowed faintly with energy. It was precise, deadly, and meant to kill. Elias' mind raced. There was no way to fight it head-on. They were outmatched in strength and firepower. But humans had something aliens often underestimated: cleverness. He scanned the surroundings, looking for anything he could use. His eyes fell on a stack of metal crates nearby. With a quick motion, he grabbed one and pushed it, causing it to crash loudly into another pile. The hunter flinched, distracted for a fraction of a second. Elias grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her down a narrow side alley, leading her toward a maintenance tunnel he had noticed earlier. The hunter recovered quickly, but it was too late. Elias and Lyra disappeared into the tunnel, the darkness hiding them. They moved quickly but silently, knowing the hunter would search the obvious routes first. As they ran, Elias glanced at Lyra. She was breathing hard but seemed exhilarated, almost alive in a way that frightened him slightly. The glow in her eyes pulsed gently, as if responding to her emotions. "You are brave," he said quietly, "and clever. Humans have survived worse, and we can survive this too." They continued through the tunnel, emerging into a narrow canal that ran beneath the city. The water was shallow but murky, and Elias led them carefully along its edge. The hunter's voice echoed somewhere above, a distorted growl of frustration as it searched for them. Elias gritted his teeth. They had escaped for now, but he knew this was only temporary. He led Lyra to a small maintenance ladder that would take them up to an abandoned observation deck. From there they could see the city sprawled below, lights flickering and reflecting off the wet streets. Elias took a deep breath, letting himself feel the cool night air. He glanced at Lyra, who was leaning against the railing, her small body tense but alert. "You are strong," he said. "Not just because of your abilities, but because you survived this long. That is what makes humans, and those who trust them, dangerous. And sometimes, cleverness, courage, and determination are stronger than the sharpest weapon." Together, human ingenuity and Lyra's mysterious abilities were a combination that could not be easily defeated. As they rested on the observation deck, Elias began to formulate a plan. They could not stay in the city. Too many dangers, too many eyes watching. He would need to take Lyra to a place where the hunter could not easily follow. Somewhere safe where she could learn to control her abilities and where they could prepare for whatever came next. Lyra watched him silently, sensing the weight of responsibility he carried. She trusted him, though she did not yet understand why. But she had learned one thing: with him she was not alone, and sometimes that was enough to give someone hope. Hours passed, and the first hints of dawn began to touch the city. Elias kept a careful watch, scanning the streets below for signs of the hunter. The quiet was a fragile thing, and he knew it would not last. But for now, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They had survived, and that meant there was still a chance. He looked at Lyra and felt a deep determination. Whoever hunted her, whoever wanted her gone, would have to face them both. And with human courage, cleverness, and heart, Elias knew they could withstand almost anything. For the first time since finding her in the rain, he allowed himself to imagine a future where she was safe, where they could plan their next move, where the bond between them could grow into something stronger than fear. The city below was alive, unpredictable, and dangerous. But humans were alive, unpredictable, and dangerous in their own way too. Elias smiled faintly, knowing that sometimes that was all it took to survive, and to protect someone worth saving. The city's quiet seemed like a fragile illusion. From their perch on the abandoned observation deck, Elias and Lyra could see the streets below, still wet from the storm. The early morning light reflected off puddles, giving the world a strange glow, but Elias knew danger was still close. The hunter had not given up, and it was only a matter of time before it tried again. Lyra sat beside him, wrapped in the oversized coat he had given her. Her glowing eyes were dim now, but her small hands fiddled with the pendant around her neck. Elias noticed it for the first time in detail, a tiny, intricate symbol etched into metal, old and almost regal in its design. He didn't recognize it, but there was a familiarity about it, a feeling that stirred something deep in his memory. "Where did you get this?" he asked gently, pointing to the pendant. Lyra looked down, her small fingers tracing the etching. "Mother gave it to me," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost afraid to speak the word aloud. "She said it would keep me safe." But the way she said her mother's name, with such weight, suggested importance far beyond anything he could have imagined. "Your mother?" he asked carefully. "Who is she?" He made a mental note to find out more himself. For now, he had to focus on keeping them both alive. He scanned the city again, searching for any signs of the hunter. The streets were mostly empty, but Elias knew better than to trust appearances. One wrong step, one overlooked shadow, and they could be cornered. "We need to move," he said finally. "We cannot stay here. Too many people, too many eyes." Elias kept close to her, silently guiding her with small gestures. Lyra had already learned some of his techniques, how to move quietly, how to use the shadows, how to observe without being seen. She moved with surprising grace for her size, almost as if instinct guided her. Hours passed as they navigated the maze of the city, eventually reaching an old library that had long been abandoned. Elias had chosen it deliberately. It was isolated, hidden from the main streets, and offered a chance to rest and gather information. Inside, the smell of old paper and dust filled the air. Elias set down their small pack and turned to Lyra. "We can rest here for a while, but we must be careful. Even abandoned buildings can hide danger." His eyes caught something, an old archive of galactic history, with faded images of leaders, symbols, and family lines. One symbol in particular made his heart skip a beat. It was the same as the pendant around Lyra's neck. Elias studied the record carefully. The symbol belonged to Queen Soralia, a legendary ruler of an alien empire known for her intelligence, strength, and influence. Her reign had shaped entire star systems, and her enemies were numerous and ruthless. Elias realized with growing shock that Lyra was not just any child. She was the daughter of Queen Soralia. He turned to Lyra, his mind racing. "Lyra, do you know who your mother is?" "But I am afraid. They want me gone too." Humans had survived countless dangers, had faced impossible odds, and had always found a way. And he, Elias, would not let this child, this daughter of a queen, fall into the hands of those who would harm her. "We need to plan carefully," he said. "They will come for you again, and we must be ready. But there is something you have that they cannot predict." "What?" "That is all I ask." As night fell, Elias kept watch by the window while Lyra rested. He couldn't shake the feeling that the hunter was out there, moving silently through the city, waiting for an opportunity. But he also knew that this knowledge, combined with their preparation, gave them an edge. Hours passed. The streets below were quiet, but Elias stayed vigilant. Then he heard it, a soft, familiar sound of movement, careful and deliberate. He tensed, signaling Lyra to stay hidden. The hunter had returned, its presence unmistakable even in the shadows. Elias assessed the situation. They were inside a building with multiple exits, and he had prepared distractions and traps. But the hunter was skilled and experienced. One mistake could be fatal. He whispered to Lyra, "Stay calm. Remember what I taught you. Watch and learn, we will not be taken." The hunter's glowing eyes scanned the room. It paused, sensing something, then moved closer. Elias reached for a small, heavy object and tossed it across the room. It clattered loudly, drawing the hunter's attention. The creature paused, then moved toward the noise, giving Elias and Lyra the chance to slip past another exit. They ran silently through a narrow back passage, emerging into a quiet courtyard. The moonlight illuminated the wet stone, and Elias led Lyra to a small hiding place beneath an overhang. They crouched there, listening as the hunter's frustrated movements echoed in the distance. Lyra's small body shook, but Elias put a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said softly. "You stayed calm, you observed. That is how we survive." It was small, hesitant, but it was there, and Elias felt a surge of hope. The child who had been lost in the rain was no longer powerless. She was learning, growing, and beginning to understand the strength humans could offer. The night passed slowly, and as dawn approached, Elias knew their next move would be crucial. They could not remain in the city, too many dangers, too many eyes watching. They would need to leave to find a safe place where Lyra could learn, grow, and prepare for whatever came next. He glanced at her, her small form curled beneath the oversized coat, glowing eyes watching him with quiet trust. Whoever hunted her, whoever wanted her gone, would have to face more than just a frightened child. They would face her, and human courage, ingenuity, and determination. And in that moment, Elias knew one thing with certainty. They could survive, and perhaps together they could change everything. The city was waking slowly. The streets glistened under the early morning light, the wet asphalt reflecting neon remnants from the night before. Elias and Lyra crouched in the shadows of a narrow alley, waiting for the right moment. Today was the day they had to leave the city. The hunter was still out there, patient and relentless, and they could not afford to be caught. Elias studied the surroundings carefully. Every alley, every doorway, every piece of debris could be a threat or a shield. Humans had a way of turning the ordinary into an advantage, and he intended to use it. Lyra sat beside him, her glowing eyes dimmed for the moment, hands clutching the pendant around her neck. "You ready?" Elias asked softly. Lyra nodded. "I am." His mind worked constantly, calculating paths, escape routes, and distractions. The first obstacle came quickly. A patrol drone hovered ahead, scanning the street with a sharp blue light. Elias froze for a moment, then whispered, "We have to distract it." He glanced around, spotting a stack of empty crates and loose metal cans nearby. With a swift motion, he tossed a few pieces to the far side of the street. The clatter drew the drone's attention. "Now," he whispered, taking Lyra's hand. They dashed across the open space, sticking close to the walls, using shadows as cover. The drone adjusted its sensors, but by then they had vanished into a side alley. Lyra's small form pressed against his side as they ran, her breathing steady but quick. Elias felt a surge of pride. The girl was learning, adapting, surviving. Her glowing eyes flickered briefly as she glanced up at him, and he smiled. "Good work," he said quietly. "Humans are clever, but so are you." Elias led them toward a safe route he had discovered on a previous supply run, an old maintenance tunnel that would take them beneath the city and out into the countryside. Once there, they would be far from immediate danger, at least for now. As they reached the tunnel entrance, Elias paused. The hunter was close. He could feel it in the air, a tension that made his muscles tighten. He whispered to Lyra, "Stay close. Watch me and do exactly as I do." The tunnel was narrow, with uneven floors and low ceilings. Elias led them at a steady pace, using his knowledge of human adaptability to navigate safely. Lyra followed closely, learning as they went, and he could see her confidence growing. Halfway through the tunnel, they heard the faint sound of movement above, footsteps, mechanical clicks, and a low hum. The hunter had tracked them this far. Elias froze, listening carefully. The figure would search systematically, but the tunnel offered some advantage: limited space, unpredictable turns, and shadows to hide in. "We need a plan," he whispered. "We will slow it down, we will confuse it, and then we run when it least expects it." Elias nodded. He had noticed her abilities growing, reacting to fear and focus. "Then focus. Do only what I say and we'll be safe. Distract, then move." Lyra raised her hand subtly, and a faint glow spread across the chamber floor. The effect was minor, almost invisible, but enough to draw attention in the shadows. Elias tossed a small piece of debris to the side. The hunter, descending into the chamber through a side hatch, focused on the glow and noise, momentarily confused. Elias grabbed Lyra's hand, and they sprinted toward the far end of the chamber, diving through a narrow side tunnel that led upward. The hunter realized the deception too late and hesitated, giving them precious seconds. They climbed the tunnel stairs, emerging into the open air just outside the city's walls. The countryside stretched before them, quiet, open, and free from the immediate danger of the city. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Lyra's small body shook with adrenaline, but she looked up at him, glowing eyes reflecting relief. "You did well," he said softly. "We're not safe yet, but we are further than they can reach for now." "Thank you," she whispered. I think I understand more now. Humans are strong." Humans had the advantage of unpredictability, and the open terrain allowed for improvisation, something alien hunters often failed to anticipate. As they walked, Elias encouraged Lyra to speak. He wanted her to grow not only in trust, but in confidence. "You have abilities," he said, "and they are remarkable, but abilities alone do not protect you. Thinking, planning, and courage, those protect you too. That is human strength, and now you share it." The countryside was calm, dotted with trees, small streams, and abandoned shelters. It was quiet, almost serene, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the city. Elias knew they would need to rest, recover, and prepare for the next phase, reaching a safe human settlement where Lyra could remain hidden and learn to control her abilities fully. Finally, they reached a small cave near a stream. Elias motioned for Lyra to enter first, checking for any signs of danger. Finding none, he followed. They sat together, the small fire he lit casting flickering shadows across the walls. Lyra leaned against him slightly, the oversized coat still wrapped around her. "You are learning," Elias said quietly, "and you are brave. That is why we will survive." Elias kept watch while Lyra rested, her glowing eyes dim now with exhaustion. He thought about the journey ahead, reaching a human settlement, keeping her hidden and preparing for the inevitable return of the hunter. But he also thought about the bond they had formed, a bond of trust, respect, and human ingenuity. At dawn, Elias decided it was time to move again. "We are not safe yet," he said softly, helping Lyra to her feet. "But we are close, close to a place where you can learn, grow, and be protected. Together, we can face anything." Small structures, guarded yet humble, nestled among the hills. Elias allowed himself a quiet sense of relief. This was the safe place they had been seeking. As they approached, he explained to Lyra what they would do. "Once we reach the outpost, you will be safe. You can learn, practice, and grow without fear, but you must continue to be careful. Danger will always exist, and the key is to be smarter, faster, and braver than those who hunt you." She was learning, adapting, and beginning to embrace both her own abilities and the human qualities that protected her. Together, they had survived impossible odds, outsmarted a relentless hunter, and reached a place of safety. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting golden light over the outpost, Elias and Lyra stepped inside. Guards glanced their way, curiosity flickering in their eyes, but they let them pass. Elias nodded, guiding her to the heart of the settlement. "You are safe now," he whispered. "And from here we will prepare for whatever comes next. Humans are clever, brave, and unpredictable. That is why we survive. And together we can face anything. Humans can be clever, yes, but courage is what changes everything."